In this world, there are several different species roaming the planet, each with their own special strengths and abilities. And then there are humans like Light who are pretty much useless. One day, Light leaves his home in hopes of becoming an adventurer and heads to the big city so he can sign up. Upon arrival, he meets one of the receptionists there and she helps him through the registration process. Since this is his first time registering at the guild, she tells him he will be starting at F rank, and just to make sure Light won't be completely worthless, she asks him if he at least has a gift he can use, and Light excitedly informs her that his ability is gacha gambling. The receptionist freezes up for a moment because she doesn't think she heard him right, but it's exactly what it sounds like. Light has the ability to summon a gacha wheel, and by pressing it, he gets a random item each time. He wants to give her a demonstration, so he pushes the button, and the item he receives is a bent fork. Okay, let's hear him out. That one was probably just a fluke, so he tries again, but this time he just gets some food. And it's not even the good kind either. The receptionist sighs and politely tells Light he's never making it out of F rank with an ability like that. Light asks her if there is any work he can accept as an F ranker, and she directs him to the bulletin board where all the available jobs are posted. But on top of being useless, he's never been to school, so he doesn't know how to read. The receptionist understands his struggle, so she takes out a list and tells Light that the best options for him at the moment are the firewood gathering, soil hauling, or landscaping jobs, but the pay is barely scraping minimum wage, so he won't earn much from it. Light says he'll happily do it, so later that day, he is out doing as much manual labor as his little body can handle. And by nightfall, he has barely earned enough money to cover his lodging expenses. However, as he is walking down the street, a group of beastmen happen to be passing by, and they immediately clock Light as a victim, so they intentionally bump into him and steal his money. Light begs them to give it back because without it, he's going to have to spend the night on the street. But the beastmen don't care, and frankly, neither does anyone else since regular humans are at the bottom of the species hierarchy, so no one is willing to stand up for him. Light sits in the mud while all the people passing by call him useless trash for no reason, until eventually, someone actually stops to lend him a hand. Light takes the woman's hand thinking she's a fellow human, but when he realizes she's an elf, he recoils in fear because he thinks he's about to be taken advantage of again. The elf tells him he doesn't have to worry, and to prove it, she gets down on her knees in the mud just to hug him. Light can hardly believe that an elf would treat a human like him with such kindness, but she doesn't seem to be lying, so Light decides to go along with it. She introduces him to the rest of her party members and explains that they are the Concord of Tribes, a party that incorporates members from all 9 races across the world with the goal of eradicating discrimination among races. The leader is a beastman named Garou, and the elf's name is Sasha. They already got members from most of the different races, so now the only thing they need is a human to become their 9th member, and that's why they want to ask Light to join their party. This all sounds good on paper, but of all the people they could get, they really had to choose the powerless and defenseless 12-year-old boy to join their special party. At least there's no baby oil this time. From then on, whenever Concord would go on a mission, Light would join them as their baggage handler, but he's still just as useless as he was before because not even 10 minutes in, he almost gets one-shotted by a giant snake monster. Fortunately, Drago and Sasha manage to save him before anything bad happens, but Sasha tells him he really needs to get his act together because this is one of the world's most dangerous dungeons and literally anything in here could kill him, so he needs to make sure he sticks close to the team. Light apologizes for his mistake, but Sasha doesn't want him to feel too bad about himself, so she just asks him to come closer so she can check if he's hurt or not. While she's busy looking after Light, the others come over and start teasing Sasha for always doting on Light any chance she gets. They are done here, so the group continues moving further into the dungeon with Light in the center so nothing bad can happen to him. But once they get to a narrow section of the path, Garou says this will be a good place to stop. Light assumes he means he wants them to take a break, so he sets his bag down and starts making some tea for everyone, but Drago tells him that won't be necessary because they are actually here to banish him from the party. Light can't believe what he just heard, so he asks them if this is some sort of prank, but literally everyone in the party, including Sasha who was being so nice to him a minute ago, suddenly does a 180 and calls Light an ugly, brainless, good-for-nothing human. Light doesn't understand what's going on, so they all explain to him that they've been pretending to like him this entire time, and that whole thing about wanting to get rid of discrimination. That was a total lie. In fact, they are some of the most racist people you'll ever meet, so they've been dying to get rid of Light since the day he joined them. If that's the case, then Light asks why they even bothered asking him to join in the first place, so Garou tells him they were only after him because of his skill. Light doesn't understand what he means since his gacha skill is as useless as it gets, but while that may be true, it's similar to the skill of the Mastro, and the Concord's higher-ups were interested in seeing if Light's skill would evolve into something that's actually useful, so they were told to be nice to him until then, even though they didn't want to. However, those same higher-ups recently decided that Light was a lost cause, so now the party has no reason to act like they care about him in the slightest. Light can't wrap his head around everything they just said, and the group realizes they might have let too much information slip, but it's not like it's going to matter soon, because Light isn't leaving this dungeon alive. His eyes go wide as soon as he hears them say that, and a second later, Garou uses his claws to slash him across the face, making it very clear that they really do intend to kill him. He takes off running to get away from them, but they all just laugh and tell him that even if he did manage to escape, he'd just end up dying to a random monster in the dungeon. With that said, they think it'll be much more fun to kill him with their own hands, so Sasha takes her bow and shoots him through the thigh to stop him from escaping. They are all enjoying the sound of Light's terror-filled cries, and Garou begins beating him up to get him to cry some more. But the others tell him to quit it because their cover story is meant to be that Light was killed by a surprise monster attack, so they can't give him any suspicious injuries. Light desperately tries to crawl away because he doesn't want to die here. But with his leg injured like this, Garou tells him there's no way he's going to escape. Even so, he continues trying to get away, and as luck would have it, he managed to trigger a teleportation trap. The trap sends him straight to one of the deeper floors, so Light is now safe from the Concord members, but that doesn't mean he is going to survive this. He is well aware of how weak he is, so he knows he's a goner the second a single monster shows up. He tries coming to terms with the fact that this is the end of the road, but he doesn't understand why all this happened to him. For the past 4 years, all the members of Concord had treated him with respect and kindness, but it all turned out to be a lie. They were just using him because they thought he was a Mastro, and when they found out he wasn't, they tried to kill him laughing in his face. He absolutely refuses to let them get away with that. No matter how hard it is, he swears that he will make it out of here alive and kill them all, even if it's the last thing he ever does. However, just then, Light hears something walk up behind him, and to his horror, he finds a level 1000 stone chimera staring him down. Even the strongest adventurers only have a few hundred levels, and he has never seen a monster like this before, so that must mean he was teleported to one of the lowest parts of the abyss. As the monster approaches him, he practically pisses himself in fear because he knows there is no way he can beat this thing. All he has right now is his Gacha ability, and has a terrible track record when it comes to being useful. He has no other option, so he frantically starts pushing the button over and over, hoping that it will save him, and miraculously, as the monster lunges at him, his Gacha wheel transforms and a beautiful maid girl appears, destroying the monster in an instant. Light is speechless after what he just witnessed, so he just sits there as the girl walks up to him. She kneels before Light and puts her hand on his cheek to heal his wound because she couldn't bear the sight of such scars on his beautiful body. Light is amazed because all the pain is gone now. The maid refers to him as Master and asks what his name is, so he tells her that he is called Light, and right there and then she swears to serve him with eternal loyalty for the rest of her life. Her name is Mai, and she is known as the Ever-Seeking Maid. As for her level, it's over 9,000. She says she is an ultra-rare pull from Light's Gacha skill, so her very being is bound to him, but Light is having trouble processing all this since he has always thought his Gacha skill was completely worthless, so it should be impossible for someone as amazing as Mai to come out of it. Mai asks him for permission to approach his ability so she can determine its true nature. Light is surprised to learn that Mai has an appraisal ability, but to be clear, she tells him that it's only one of her many skills. Light tells her she's free to appraise him, so she begins the scan, and she is truly amazed by what she sees. Light's Gacha skill has dozens of layers of protection woven into it, so only people of Mai's level are able to see its true capabilities, and from what she can tell, it can be used an unlimited number of times. The rewards that it generates depend on the surrounding mana density and go all the way from ranks like EX and Super Ultra Rare to Normal and Error. Light doesn't really understand what Mai is talking about, so she explains that there is always mana present in the atmosphere. But the mana density on the surface is quite low, which reduces the chances of unlocking a useful reward like Mai to almost zero. However, in the deepest part of a dungeon like this, the mana density is incredibly high, so the probability of a successful summon shot up exponentially. Mai assumes Light must have intentionally ventured down to the depths of the dungeon to bring out the true potential of his gift, but that couldn't be further from the truth. He came down here with people he thought he could trust, but they all ended up betraying him. They slashed his face, shot him in the leg, and laughed at him the entire time they did it. All Light ever wanted was to give his family a better life, but they tried to kill him just because he's a human. He begins yelling that he will never forgive them for as long as he lives, but Mai pulls Light into a hug for comfort because she hates seeing him so sad. She knows she could never understand the suffering Light must have felt, but she knows how to make him feel better. She assures Light that as soon as he gives the order, she will have the heads of those backstabbers lined up on the floor within the hour, but he gets up and tells her she can't do that. Mai tells him that scoundrels like those people do not deserve mercy, but he didn't tell her to wait because he thinks killing them would be wrong. Rather, it's because he wants to be the one to get revenge with his own two hands. He fell for their trick and nearly died at their hands because he was too weak to defend himself, so he wants to become strong enough to make sure nothing like that ever happens to him again. He knows it sounds far-fetched for a weakling like him to say he wants to be strong, but Mai doesn't think it's impossible at all. She swears that if he wants to become strong enough to exact revenge on his own, then she will do everything within her power to make that happen. We cut to 3 years into the future, and right in the middle of the Abyss dungeon, Light has used his gacha skill to build an entire nation and summon an army of powerful servants who are so down bad for him that they pay good money to get a cup of his bathwater. As he and May walk down the halls, she gets really annoyed by all the fairy maids constantly trying to get Light's attention, but Light doesn't see it as a problem since it's just a sign of their devotion to him. They head out into the city to greet Light's people, and everyone here truly loves and respects him as their leader. One even brings up that the monthly sweet supply is running low, and Light promises to look into getting some more. He thinks it might be a supply chain issue since the city has way more people now than it did 3 years ago, so he will have to adjust things to satisfy the increased demand. In the meantime, Light asks May if she knows what the other super elite servants he summoned are up to right now, so she tells him that Oyuki is busy napping out the area around the Abyss, and Ellie has been busy researching new magic to help Light achieve his goals. He's grateful that everyone is doing so much to help him out, but May didn't mention anything about Nezuna, so he wonders what she's been up to lately. May explains that Nezuna is just patrolling the inside of the castle for now, but it's not because they need added security inside, it's because she's too dumb to help with anything that doesn't involve fighting. Meanwhile, inside the castle, we see Nezuna cheerfully strolling through the hallways without a care in the world, but as long as she's not causing trouble, they usually just let her do whatever she wants. As for Light, it is now time for his daily training session, so he goes to meet with one of his elite summons, Jack. Even though he has all these powerful subordinates to protect him, he still wants to be strong enough to handle things on his own, so he often goes out to spar with Jack, and after 3 years of this routine, he is capable of going blow for blow with him. Back in the castle, Nezuna is still walking around aimlessly until she happens to run into a few of the maids handling cleaning duty for today. She tells them she's on a super important patrol mission right now, and the maids all tell her that she's doing a really good job, but they are really just trying to flatter her into doing them a favor. And it's working. Now that she's in a good mood, they tell her that there's a special place that they'd like her to patrol for them, and Nezuna agrees to listen to their request without a second thought. A few minutes later, Nezuna knocks on the door to Light's bedroom, but to her surprise, May is the one who answers. She asks Nezuna what she's doing here, and Nezuna proudly states that she's on patrol, which is technically true. But now that she thinks about it, she wonders what May is doing in Light's room in the first place, since he's supposed to be training with Jack right now. May tries to make up an excuse and says she was just cleaning Light's room for him while he is away, but while she was talking, Nezuna manages to slip inside, and it definitely doesn't look like May was doing much cleaning in here. In fact, if Nezuna had to guess, she'd say May was rolling around on Light's bed and sniffing his pillow until a moment ago. May panics and says that was just part of her special bed-making technique, and Nezuna doesn't question how dumb that sounds for you in 1 second, so she starts praising May for doing such a good job. Speaking of jobs, she finally remembers that the fairy maids asked her to deliver a message to May, and it basically says they are tired of her keeping Light's room to herself all the time because they want to clean his stuff too. Nezuna doesn't really understand what the big fuss is about, but May receive the message loud and clear, so she gives Nezuna a little reward for her trouble and sends her on her way. Now that she's done delivering the message, she heads down to the pastry shop to buy herself a treat with the money May gave her, and afterwards she happens to run into Oyuki on one of the terraces. Nezuna is surprised to see her here since she thought Oyuki was out on a surveillance mission, but she just keeps mewing, so Nezuna has no idea what she's saying. Light is usually able to decipher what those mews are meant to mean, but Nezuna's best guess is that Oyuki wants Nezuna to destroy the entire forest for her for no reason. Nezuna would definitely do that too, if no one corrected her, so Oyuki is forced to break character and speak normally to tell Nezuna that she just came to deliver a section of the map that she completed. Nezuna laughs and tells Oyuki she should have just said that from the beginning, so she takes the map and heads off to continue her patrol. Her next stop is the throne room, and after making sure there's no one around, she starts hugging Light's throne because she hasn't gotten to see him at all today. But while she is doing that, she suddenly hears a loud crunch sound, and to her horror, she realizes that she just broke the wing off one of the throne fixtures. She's going to get in a lot of trouble if anyone finds out about this, so she frantically fixes it just enough so it will break as soon as someone else touches it, and then she bolts out of there. Outside, Light and Jack are finally done with their training session, so they call it a day and head to the baths to relax. Jack tells Light he is getting really good at controlling his body, and there aren't many people down here who are strong enough to keep up with him anymore. The same probably goes for the people on the surface, but he reminds Light that he shouldn't let himself get too cocky, because they don't know what might be waiting for them on the surface. Light says he understands that he needs to be prepared, and he promises not to let his power go to his head so there will be no mistakes when the time comes for his revenge. Meanwhile, Mei has called the 4 fairy maids who gave Nazuna that message into her office, and she does not seem happy. She asks them if they know why she has summoned them here today, and they try to feign ignorance, but then Mei reads out their letter word for word, and she already got Nazuna to tell her that they were the ones who wrote the letter, so there's no way for them to weasel their way out of this mess. They all shuffle backwards and start apologizing for what they wrote, but they try to downplay their actions by saying they only did it out of concern for Mei. They say they know she's been busy lately, so they wanted to lighten her load by taking over the cleaning of Light's room for her, and maybe sniffing a pillow or two while they were at it. But that's not the point. Mei is also disappointed by the fact that they made Nazuna do their dirty work for them, since she might have considered it if they had the guts to deliver their message in person. She tells them that their request has been denied, and until further notice, they will be assigned to cleaning the entire corridor that leads to the throne room. And they aren't allowed to use any magic to speed up the process either. The maids can't believe Mei would give them such an impossible task because it'd take forever to clean that huge corridor by hand, but Mei doesn't think it'd be that hard. If anything, she says she's doing them a favor since level 500s like them need to put in a lot of hard work if they ever hope to reach her level. Additionally, Mei informs them that she is heading to the surface soon on a mission for Light, so the 4 of them are going to have to pick up the slack while she's gone. Later on, the 4 maids gather in their room, and they are really upset by the fact that Mei is punishing them for making a simple complaint. They don't think it's fair that she's the only one who gets to bask in Light's scent, but Mei is the strongest of them all, so there's no way they can stand up to her. Prime suggests that they could try poisoning her, but Hifumi already looked into that, and Mei is immune to all forms of poison, so there's no way it'd work. They all resign themselves to defeat and start groaning about how much they want to clean Light's room and sniff his bed. Hifumi takes it a step further and says she wants to use one of Light's used forks, but hearing her say that out loud makes it sound weird, so the others all call her a degenerate and say she's taking it too far. Hifumi defends herself and says everyone here would probably do the same thing if they got the opportunity, and they can't deny it, so they really are just as bad as Hifumi. Now that they think about it, Mei isn't much better than they are either, since she was all up in Light's bed earlier today, and the fact that she was the first one Light summoned means that for who knows how long she and Light were alone in the dungeon together. And at the time, Light's level was so low that he wouldn't have been able to defend himself from any monsters, so he was probably clinging to Mei the entire time. They'd all go mad with jealousy at the thought that Mei might have done indecent things with Light at some point, and Hifumi comes up with the bright idea of turning their jealous energy into a curse, so they all sit at the table and begin chanting over and over for Mei to die. Unfortunately for them, Mei has been standing outside their door this entire time, and she could hear every word they just said about her, so she asks them if they have anything to say for themselves. The 4 cower behind the table and begin telling Mei that they would never actually wish for anything bad to happen to her, but Mei clearly heard them praying for her death, so she asks what that was about. The group eventually admits that they were just jealous because Mei was summoned first and got to spend a lot of alone time with Light because of it, but Mei tells them that nothing indecent happened between her and Light. It took around 3 months for Light to summon Oyuki, and in that time Mei was busy teaching him about martial arts and world history, so no debauchery took place. The girls are relieved to hear that, but then Mei continues speaking and tells them that she had originally come here to apologize for giving them such a harsh punishment earlier, but after what they just did, she thinks she may need to be even harsher than before. She tells them that they will now be required to clean the entire throne room in addition to the corridor. The 3 kneel at Mei's feet and beg her to reconsider because there's no way they'd be able to clean the giant throne room by themselves, but Mei tells them they shouldn't have thought of that before they decided to prey on her downfall. They are forced to get to work immediately, and at this rate, they might have to work through the night to get it all done. But while Hifumi was dusting off the throne, the wing of the broken fixture falls off, and they all go silent as they realize just how screwed they are. All the while, Nazuna is lying in her bed without a care in the world. The next morning, Light heads outside and meets Oyuki, Nazuna, and Ellie out by the front gate. Nazuna is particularly excited to see Light since she didn't get to talk to him at all yesterday. Light wants to go straight to the point, but just then a rockhound appears out of nowhere, and even though Light is strong enough that it isn't a threat to him, he still begins trembling with fear a little because he remembers the day he nearly died to one of these. The others are enraged that a mere hound would dare to frighten their lord, so they start discussing plans to wipe its kind from existence. The hound didn't even do anything yet, but it can tell that one wrong move would spell its doom, so it lies down on the floor and starts whimpering for its life. Light tells the others that there's no need to get so upset because he's fine, and he even goes over to pet the hound to show them that it doesn't bother him. He apologizes to the hound for scaring it so much, and if he hadn't stepped in, they'd have actually wiped out its entire species without hesitation. They ask Light if there's a reason he told them to meet him out here, and he says May told him everything is ready for the mission, so they can finally head out to exact his revenge. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the world, Garou is walking through a Beastman town, and as the Beast hero, everyone here is fawning over him. In fact, this one dude in the back even offers to pimp out his own sister, but Garou isn't interested right now. Just then, he spots a poor human sifting through the trash for something to eat, and this kid was nowhere near Garou, but he decides to take a detour just so he can knock the child to the ground and spit on his face for fun. Afterwards, Garou and his team of lackeys head to a private room so they can begin glazing him. Figuratively, of course. They tell him they think it's amazing that he went from a poor beast slum child to the frontrunner to become the next chief. Even the current village chief has acknowledged his power, so they ask him how he managed to get this far. Garou brags that he just uses his instincts to pick out the best jobs for himself, like that one he took 3 years ago. He got paid a lot to pretend to be part of a race unification party, and all he had to do was finish off a human who was suspected of being a master. He never actually confirmed whether Light was dead or not, but with how weak he was, there's no way he could have survived down there on his own, so he thinks it'd be best to just forget about the brat. However, a moment later, May walks into the room asking about Light. Garou's lackeys yell that she has no right to speak to him like that, but Garou says it's fine because he would like to hear what business she has with him. May explains that she's a maid serving Lord Light, and she makes up a story claiming that Light is of noble blood and she has been searching all over the continent for him. Garou is skeptical since the people who hired him for that mission did a thorough background check on Light, and Light himself never mentioned anything about being a noble, but May definitely looks like a rich noble's maid, so he sees this as a good opportunity to make some cash. He asks her what she wants with him, so May says that she recently discovered that Light supposedly passed away in the dungeon 3 years ago, so she would like Garou to lead her to his last known location so she can pay her respects. She even offers to pay him in solid gold for the trouble, but Garou's senses are warning him that this whole thing is a trap. It seems way too fishy that she's willing to pay so much just for them to lead her into the dungeon, but since May looks like an ordinary human female, Garou brushes off his concerns because there's no way a human would be able to beat him. He agrees to lead her to Light's last known location, but he says he's not doing this for the money, he's doing this because Light was a good friend of his, and he wants to help out in any way he can. May knows that everything he just said is complete BS, but she has to stay in character, so she thanks him, and a month later, the group is closing in on the spot Light went missing. However, Garou has no intention of actually fulfilling the terms of the agreement, so as soon as they get there, he plans to attack May and let her die the same way Light did. Once they arrive at the spot, May falls to her knees in despair at the thought of how hopeless Light must have felt back then. Meanwhile, Garou tries to spin a story about Light getting attacked by a monster and falling into a teleportation trap before anyone could save him. But as he is speaking, several of his men begin blocking off the exit so May won't be able to escape once they attack. They are just about to pounce on her. But May suddenly says that if only she had been with Light from the start, then he wouldn't have been tricked and betrayed by such lowlives. As soon as he hears her say that, Garou panics and backs away because no one aside from the other Concord party members and the higher-ups know about what really happened here. He demands to know how she found out about that and accuses her of being a spy from one of the other races, but May feels insulted by that statement. She is and will always be a maid dedicated to serving Lord Light with all her being, and for Garou to suggest that she's anything is a crime punishable by death. Garou feels a terrifying pressure coming from May, and even though she's just a human, his instincts are telling him to get the hell out of here right now. However, just as May was able to lose her cool and plaster the wall with Beastman blood, Light shows up and tells her to stop because Garou is his prey to deal with. Garou and his men were stunned. None of them had heard Light approaching. Garou couldn't believe his eyes. He hadn't even considered the possibility that Light could have survived. Light casual says he is back to get his revenge, but Garou begins to laugh because he thinks it's hilarious that a level 15 human like Light thinks he is strong enough to get revenge on someone like him who is level 150. Garou has no idea how Light managed to make it this far, but he's sure that if he kills Light and brings him back now, then he will be promoted to chief in no time. Light sighs and asks him if he's really not going to ask him how he managed to survive before resorting to violence, but Garou just assumes Light got lucky and was saved by May after he was teleported, which is actually exactly what happened. Garou orders his men to attack Light, so two immediately charge forward to strike, but before they could get too close, their heads are suddenly divorced from their bodies by May. Garou's remaining men couldn't even keep track of May's movements, so they are starting to freak out, but Garou tells them to calm down because he's sure that was just a fluke. Meanwhile, Light thanks Mei for taking the initiative to protect him, but he says he can handle things on his own from here, so he just wants her to guard the exit and make sure no one leaves. Garou tells his men there's no need to worry because they can't possibly lose to a pair of inferior humans, but Light is starting to get sick of listening to Garou go on and on about how he is so much better than humans when in reality, he is the weak one here. Garou doesn't believe that for even 1 second because it is well known that all humans are weak and have little mana compared to the other races, so they could never be weaker than Light. If that's what he truly believes, then Light asks him why 2 of his men have their heads rolling on the floor if they are all stronger than him, but Garou just dismisses that as a careless mistake. He and his goons then proceed to jump at Light, so he calmly closes his eyes and proceeds to dog walk them while barely lifting a finger. Garou falls to the ground wide-eyed because he just got hit harder than ever before, and he couldn't even see it coming. Light stands over his body and asks him if this is really the best he and his so-called superior race can accomplish, but Garou can't stand the fact that Light is looking down on him, so he decides to use his trump card and smashes a necklace to the ground, summoning a level 500 Fenrir to take care of Light for him. He proudly yells that this is the end of the road for Light, but Light tells him that level 500 is still way too weak to be a challenge for him. Garou thinks Light must have gone insane from fear. There's no way he could possibly defeat a Fenrir on his own. He tells him to get down on his knees and beg if he wants a painless death. Light can see that the power difference here hasn't sunk in yet, so he sets his staff aside and tells Garou he won't move from this spot, so he is free to hit him with his best attack. Garou is still convinced that Light must be bluffing, so he charges up his Fenrir's Howling Beast Blast and hits Light with enough energy to vaporize a small fortress. However, when the dust settles, Light is still standing, unharmed and unmoved. He thinks it's a little embarrassing that Garou was bragging so much about an attack that barely did anything. He also thinks it's weird that Garou keeps calling his summon a Fenrir when it's barely strong enough to be classified as a Fenrir puppy. He then pulls out a summon card and says he will show Garou what a real Fenrir looks like right before summoning a wolf god. This is a level 9000 Fenrir that goes beyond anything Garou has ever seen in his life, and after Light orders it to take care of Garou's summon, it literally just blows some air in the direction of Garou's wolf, and it is suddenly frozen in a block of ice. Seeing Light casually pull out a wolf that was able to no-diff his summon finally makes Garou realize how screwed he is, but Light tells him the wolf god was just for show, because he could have taken care of Garou's summon on his own if he had wanted. And to make the difference in strength absolutely clear, Light enables his status screen to show Garou that he is currently level 9,999. He is absolutely terrified now because he didn't even know levels could go up that high, and he is starting to think that Light is an imposter. But it's not like it matters whether this is the real Light or not, since he's definitely going to kill Garou with how things are going. He throws down his weapons and his pride and begins begging Light to spare his life. He says he was just following his country's orders and he never would have betrayed him otherwise. He looks up, hoping that Light will have mercy on him. But before any of that, Light says he has a few questions for Garou. First, he asks him about the masters that his higher-ups asked him to find, but Garou says he doesn't actually know what they are. Light then asks him why those same higher-ups ordered Garou and the others to kill him after confirming that Light wasn't a master, but Garou really doesn't have any information. He just did as he was told. Light then asks the rest of the beast men if they know anything about the masters, and they all lie that they do in hopes of getting Light to spare them. But in the next moment, Mei slices them all to bits for daring to state falsehoods in front of Lord Light. Light then turns back to Garou and says he has one final question to ask, but in case he was thinking about lying, he should know that Mei's eye of judgment can tell whether he is being honest or not, and he won't like what happens if she finds out he is lying. Since Garou's intuition is so sharp, Light asks him if he thinks it would be possible to win a war against the surface nations as he is now. Garou gulps in hesitation, but he eventually tells Light that his incredible strength would certainly give him an advantage early on in the battle, but he would eventually lose. He is still only one person, so winning an entire war against nations that have countless soldiers, weapons, and items at their disposal would be practically impossible. Garou thinks Light will be upset by the answer he just gave, but Light can tell that Garou was telling the truth and he already expected as much. However, he says there's something he wants to show Garou, so he pulls out a teleport card and transports both Garou and Mei to the throne room. Garou covers his head in fear because he doesn't know what Light has planned for him, but when he opens his eyes, he is left speechless as he sees Light's army in all their glory. Light walks up to his throne, and once he is there, he asks all of his subordinates to display their levels so Garou can see how powerful they truly are. To Garou's horror, he finds out that most of Light's army is above level 5,000, and even the weakest ones are still level 1,500. Now that Garou has seen his true military power, Light asks him if it would be possible to win a war against the surface with an army like this, and the look on his face tells Light all he needs to know. Now that he has confirmed that he can win as a reward, Light says he will forgive Garou for all the pain he caused back then. Psych, Light says he is going to put Garou through constant suffering that will make him beg for death, and Garou knows there is nothing he can do about it, because at this point, Light might as well be a god of destruction. The next day, Light returned to his hometown to find his family and bring them to his dungeon city, but unfortunately, by the time they arrived, all he found waiting for him was a pile of rubble and decaying flesh. Apparently, the village had been destroyed roughly 6 months ago by some unknown forces and no one was spared. Light searches the village for corpses so he can hold a proper funeral for them. And to his relief, he doesn't find any bodies belonging to his siblings, so he believes they must still be alive out there somewhere. However, his parents weren't so lucky. Gold asks Light if he is alright since this must be very difficult for him to process, but he says he will be fine. For now, they need to focus on the mission at hand, so he asks Gold and Nemumu to help gather as much information as possible. While they may now know that their military is strong enough to contend with the world's forces, it would be foolish to march into war right away, so he wants to find out more details regarding the strength of each nation. Additionally, he is fairly certain that the destruction of his hometown had something to do with the fact that he was suspected to be a master, so he wants to find out what a master is and why it is worth shedding so much blood over. If he finds out that this is just a case of some wealthy bastards getting greedy for power, then he swears that he will burn the world to ash and then force-feed the cinders to the people behind all this. Gold understands why Light is so angry, but he warns him to keep his rage in check once they are around other people, because the energy he is releasing could kill a regular person instantly. Light apologizes for the slip-up and pulls out an item called the Fool's Mask to suppress his energy and hide his identity. He then says goodbye to the graves of his mom and dad and apologizes for not being able to save them. He, Nemumu, and Gold then begin flying towards the city of Dagas, but Nemumu is curious since she doesn't know what Light plans to do once they arrive. Just then, Gold tells Nemumu that she should be careful about how she addresses their lord while they are on the surface, and Light explains to her that referring to him by his real name would tip off the people behind Concord, so instead he plans to go by the name Dark while they are on the mission. Nemumu says she understands, and as for what Light plans to do in Dagas, he tells her that he is going to register himself as an adventurer under the name Dark, and as he rises through the ranks, he will be able to gather more and more information from the guild Big Shots. After a little while, Nemumu spots the city of Dagas over the horizon, and they wouldn't want to draw too much attention by flying in, so Light suggests they should land in the forest and walk the rest of the way. Although with Gold's magnificent armor, they are going to stand out either way. As the three are walking through the forest, they come upon a scene of a human tradesman being robbed by a bunch of dwarves, and while they would have preferred to stay out of sight until they got to the city, Gold's armor comes with inbuilt sparkle animations, so the bandits immediately notice him. They then try robbing him as well, but that doesn't go so well for them, and the dwarves are all left tied up in the middle of the road. The two humans are extremely thankful that they have been saved, so they offer to give Light and the others a ride into the city as a gesture of gratitude. Along the way, the man's son talks about how amazing Gold was since he had never seen someone take out dwarves so easily before. The man assumes they must be a famous group of adventurers, but Light tells him they actually aren't even registered yet. The man is shocked to hear this, but he tells them that if they really want to register as adventurers, then Dagas is the right place to go since it has one of the biggest guilds around, and it's right near the border between the elf, dwarf, and human kingdoms. There are a fair number of humans who gather here, so it is one of the more accommodating cities for humanity. He was even able to open up a fairly successful human hotel there, and he invites Light and the others to stay there if they need a place to stay. A little while later, they arrive at Dagas, and Light and the others ask Colonel to drop them off by the city entrance since they want to walk the rest of the way. For Gold and Nemumu, this is their first time actually seeing a surface city, and they notice that there are a lot of shops around that sell armor and weapons. But Light tells them that's just because there are a lot of adventurers here. Not to mention that the Dwarf Kingdom is close by, and those guys specialize in blacksmithing, so of course they'd sell their wares here. Once the group arrives at the guild, Nemumu notices that all the humans seem to scatter whenever someone from a different race walks by, and Light takes that as a sign that humans are treated poorly in this city as well. Even if it isn't immediately obvious, he heads to the front desk to register, and as usual, he's required to start out at F rank, so Light is going to have to do a few quests to raise his rank later. But before that, they need to find a place to stay, and Light recalls Colonel mentioning that he owns a hotel, so he and the others decide to head there. Colonel is surprised to see Light again and asks what he can do for him, so Light says he has a special request to make. He tells Colonel that he would like to rent out the entire top floor of this building, and under no circumstances should anyone, even Colonel's staff, be allowed to enter. As payment, he plops a bag full of gold coins down on the table, and Colonel is left speechless because he doesn't know what to say. Light says he can pay more money if this isn't enough, but Colonel tells him this is already 10 times more than enough. He says he can't accept this kind of money from the man who saved his life earlier, but Light insists, so Colonel eventually accepts the generous offer and says he will get the rooms ready as soon as possible. A little while later, Light and the others head upstairs, and he takes out a few perception-blocking spell cards and casts them on the room to ensure that no one will be able to eavesdrop. He can finally relax without having to worry about someone spying on him, so he pulls up a chair and takes a seat so he can rest. While Light is seated, Nemumu speaks up and tells him that while she is aware that he is very powerful, and that he chose to become an adventurer here to gather information, there is always a risk that he might get hurt on the surface, so she thinks it would be safer if Light returned to the dungeon city and let them handle things here on their own. Light is a nice person, but what Nemumu just suggested is basically trying to sideline him in his own revenge plot, and that pisses him off to the extreme because she's essentially saying she thinks he's too incompetent to pull it off. Nemumu immediately realizes that she screwed up, so she begs Light to forgive her insolence, but it's too late for that. He looks like he might actually kill Nemumu for what she said, and Gold can tell that things are getting really tense, so he laughs and tells Light that Nemumu simply doesn't understand the appeal of revenge. He tells her that Light wants to exact his vengeance with his own two hands without any middleman, and that's a noble cause to work towards. Hearing Gold's lighthearted banter makes Light realize that he may have gone too far, so he gets down and apologizes to Nemumu for letting his emotions get the better of him, since he knows she only said that out of concern for his safety. But Nemumu acknowledges that this was her fault for stepping out of line with her comments, so she begs him to allow her to pledge her allegiance to him once more. Light really doesn't think that's necessary, but he agrees to let her do it anyway, so Nemumu gently lifts his foot and kisses it. In this world, a kiss to the foot is the greatest show of respect one can show towards a leader, but Light has never really been a fan of this custom, especially with how awkward it was to have all his subordinates kiss his feet one after the other when he first summoned them. Even Gold acknowledges that it's kind of weird, especially since Nemumu looks like she's enjoying it way too much. The next morning, Light and the others head for the dungeon, and as they are walking through town, a lot of people start to stare because Gold has more bling than a SoundCloud rapper, and Nemumu looks really pretty. Although the only thing they have to say about Light is that he looks weird in that mask, but that does fit his dark persona, so it doesn't bother him. There's a long line of people waiting to get into the dungeon, but Gold notices that there don't seem to be any elves here at all. Light tells him that's because the elves and the dwarves are currently in a dispute over who owns this dungeon, so they tend to avoid each other. Nemumu praises Light for always having the perfect answer to any question, and he appreciates the compliment, but he asks her if she really needs to stand so close all the time because her chest is squishing up against the back of his head. She tells him it's her job to keep him safe at all times, so she needs to be as close as possible, and before Light can argue, he notices 3 people cut in front of the line. The little one is most likely a servant, and the second one seems like someone with moderate training, but as for the guy in front, Light can tell that he carries all of his movements are sharp and precise, even with the bulky weapon on his back. He is without a doubt a seasoned fighter, and a few of the other humans are too scared to confront him, since they probably get cut down for speaking. However, Light doesn't have to worry about that, so he confronts the elf and tells him it's rude to cut in line like that. The elf becomes enraged when he realizes a human is daring to speak to him, so he reaches for his sword, but the elder he's with tells him it's not worth causing a commotion or something like this, so the warrior agrees to go to the back of the line. However, as he walks past Light, he warns him that he will make sure he regrets disrespecting him like that. Once the elf is gone, the rest of the humans in line praise Light for standing up to that bully, and the kids from earlier come over to personally thank him since they couldn't work up the courage to do so. Light tells them there's no need to thank him since he was only doing it out of self-interest, but they are still thankful. Just then, one of the kids speaks up and asks Gold if his armor is really made out of gold since everyone here is curious, but before Gold can say anything, Nemumu tells them that none of Gold's armor is actually made of gold, otherwise it'd be too weak to offer any protection. The kid is then about to ask if Gold is just wearing it for attention then, but his friends stop him because it'd be a rude question to ask. However, Gold explains that he really does just wear it for attention, since there's no better color to represent the shining example he sets as a knight. The kids ask Light and the others if this is their first time heading into the dungeon, and Light confirms this, but he asks them how they knew. The kids explain that this floor is quite expansive, so adventurers often have to camp inside, but Light's party didn't bring any camping gear with them, so he figured they must have never been inside before. Just then, the guard calls for the next party to head inside, so the kids say goodbye and run into the dungeon together. Meanwhile, Light and the others are wondering if they should start carrying fake luggage around, since even though they have everything they need stored in an item box, they wouldn't want people mistaking them for noobs. A little while later, it's their turn to enter the dungeon, and this is Light's first time entering one aside from the Abyss. Dungeons are filled with mana that gets stronger the deeper you go, and it often leads to the creation of things like monsters and traps, so the inside of a dungeon is practically its own world. Once they arrive on the first floor, Light casts concealment magic on all of them so enemies can't track them down, and they all start flying towards the second floor. Meanwhile, that elf from before is busy taking his anger out on a bunch of orcs because he can't believe a human would dare to speak to him in such a manner. His name is Kito, and he says he is a legendary hero from the Elf Kingdom with the blood of a master flowing through his veins, so he deserves respect. He says that would never have happened if his level wasn't so low, but Yenny tells him that a level of 1,500 is already way higher than the usual level cap for elves, but Kito says it's not enough because he needs enough power to obliterate all the fools who mocked him. Yenny tells him he sympathizes because he also wants to get revenge on the idiots who refused to acknowledge his research and exiled him, so he would be more than happy to use that research to help Kito level up even further. Meanwhile, Light and the others have already made it down to the third floor, and they just finished dealing with a large horde of orcs. Light suggests they should start heading back now since they've gotten enough proof for the guild already, and that fight left him pretty dirty, so he wants to take a bath. As soon as Nememu hears that, she offers to wash every inch of Light's body for him once they get back, but he doesn't respond. On the way back, Light and the others run into the kids from earlier, so they head down to meet up with them, but all of a sudden they hear a lot of noise coming from the forest and dozens of wolves come running out. The kids tell Light they need to retreat since they won't be able to fight the wolves, but Light tells them the wolves aren't what they need to worry about because there's an even bigger threat heading their way, a giant quad-scythe mantis. The kids can't believe what they are seeing since the mantis monster species was supposedly exterminated 10 years ago, and there's no way they can handle one on their own. The leader asks Mia to try hitting the mantis with some magic as a distraction, but he knows that won't be enough, so he desperately turns Light and the others and asks them to help disorient the monster so they can all escape together. However, after hearing that the kids plan on retreating, Light asks if that means they won't mind if he takes it for himself. The kids think he's crazy because a mantis like that has got to be at least level 500, but Light tells them there's no need to worry because he and his friends are more than capable of dealing with it. Gold steps up to take the first swing at it, and to his surprise, the mantis is actually able to block a bunch of his strikes without suffering much damage, so its claws must be sturdier than he thought. Light decides to go up next and launches a fire arrow straight at the mantis, but before it could connect, the mantis parried it and sent it right back at Light. As the kids watch this, they think Light and the others are in trouble, so they ask Mia to hurry up with her attack magic, but she's way too excited about what Light just did to focus. He just used combat-grade magic without having to use an incantation, and she didn't even know that was possible. The others don't know much about magic, so they can't tell what counts as impressive or not, but they Light and his friends. However, Gold tells them they are better off sitting this one out, and as an added bonus, he says he will give them a little lesson about what it means to be a knight. For one, he tells them that a shield doesn't need to be limited to just defense, and as the mantis attacks him, he turns around and perfectly parries its attack, shattering the mantis's claw in the process. He then tells them that a knight must never miss an opportunity to strike, so while the mantis is still reeling from the pain of losing its claw, Gold rushes behind it and chops off one of its legs. Light then comes in with more fire arrows, but this time, as the mantis deflects them, the arrows simply change trajectory and fly into its back. Light has taken control of the arrows, so now, no matter what the mantis does, they will always hit their mark. All of the mantis' limbs are eventually blown off, and it realizes it stands no chance at defeating Light, so it books it back towards the forest, and Light is surprised that it is smart enough to decide to retreat. But he's not going to let it escape after all this. He casts a firewall in front of the mantis to stop it from getting to the forest, and Mia is absolutely losing her mind because she has never seen anyone use such widespread tactical magic instantly like that. There's nowhere left for the mantis to run, but it's still got its wings, so it takes off into the sky as a final escape attempt. However, before it could flee, Nememu leaped up after it and diced it to pieces midair. After she returns to the ground, Gold tells her that she messed up, and this gets under her skin because she thought she was doing exactly what Light wanted by destroying the mantis, but Gold points out that she also destroyed all the valuable parts, so now there's no way for them to sell any of it when they get back to town. Nememu soon realizes she really did mess up, so she immediately starts begging Light for forgiveness, but he says it's not a big deal. Meanwhile, the kids are all standing off to the side, wondering whether they really just saw a human defeat a quad-scythe mantis or if they hallucinated the entire thing. A few minutes later, while sifting through all the mantis goo, the kids happen to find its magic gem, and by sheer luck, it's still in one piece, so Light will be able to submit it as proof of his accomplishment. But before he leaves, one of the kids approaches him and asks if he is from a famous party of adventurers or something because he seems way too strong to be a newbie. However, Light informs them that they are all indeed F-rankers, and the kids don't know what to believe anymore. Now that the fight is over, Mia uses her magic to create a water ball and offers to let Light use it to wash the mantis goo off himself. Light is grateful that she would use her precious mana to allow him to wash himself, but she says this is the least she could do. Since it's getting late, the leader asks Light and the others if they would like to camp out with them for the night. Partially because it's dangerous to roam around once it gets dark, but also due to the fact that Mia really wants to talk about magic with Light, and since there's no harm in it, Light agrees to stay. While the group is eating, Mia asks Light all sorts of questions about his past, but he can't exactly reveal his plans to her, so he makes up a fake backstory and says both of his parents were powerful mages, which is why he is so good at casting magic without incantations. That makes sense to Mia, but her brother says he still doesn't understand why it's so impressive. After hearing him say that, she goes on a long rant about how incredible Light's magic was. There are three main classes of magic, namely the combat class, magic that can be used on a single target, tactical class, magic that affects a wide area, like the firewall Light used before. And finally, there's strategic magic, which has the potential to affect the world on a global scale. It includes things like creating earthquakes or meteorite strikes, but it usually requires a group of elite mages pooling their mana together and reciting incantations to pull that off. For the other races, casting advanced spells is easy, but humans, on the other hand, are rarely able to achieve such a thing. That's why she was so amazed that a human like Light could pull off such a feat. Mia's brother still doesn't understand much about magic, but from what Mia has said, he can tell that Light must be truly incredible. However, he tells Mia to give herself some credit as well, since her magic was good enough to earn her a referral to the Magic Academy from the Duchy. This gets Light's attention, so he asks if they are referring to the one in charge of the nation formed jointly by all 9 races, the Principality of Nine. Mia confirms this, and Gold acknowledges that she must be a talented mage to have been recognized by the Principality. Mia's brother agrees, but unfortunately, both of their parents passed away from a plague, so she couldn't afford to attend the academy, and they were forced to create an adventuring party with 2 of their childhood friends, Jimra and Wordy, just so they could get by. Right now, their goal is to earn enough money from exploring dungeons to send Mia to the academy, but Mia says she's happy just getting to spend time with them, so they don't need to push themselves too far for her sake. Her brother assures her that he won't do anything reckless, and seeing Mia and her brother talk like this reminds Light a lot of the time he used to spend with his little sister. Just then, Mia and her brother ask Light why he decided to become an adventurer, so he makes up a story and tells them his parents died in a fire, and he was left with severe burns, so he is searching for a magic potion to heal himself. That sounds really rough, so no one knows what to say anymore, and Jimra doesn't like all the tension, so he gets up and asks if Gold and Nemumu are dating. Nemumu immediately becomes defensive and says she would never date someone like Gold, and Gold is much calmer about it, but he says he has no interest in a woman as immature as Nemumu. While those two are arguing, elsewhere in the dungeon, Kido is busy cutting down orcs to get Yannick the research samples he needs for his experiment to surpass the level caps imposed on each race. And now that he has enough magic material ready, he says all he needs is a human guinea pig, and Kido knows exactly who he wants to hunt down for the experiment. Some time goes by and Light heads to the guild to exchange his latest haul of magic stones. A large crowd forms around him because they've never seen someone return with so many magic gems. After Light and the others defeated the Mantis, they earned quite the name for themselves in the city, and people now call their party Black Motley. The receptionists have started treating them a lot better lately, and Light is happy to be receiving all this attention since it was his goal from the beginning. As he and the others are walking towards the dungeon, he is suddenly called out to by a man on the road, and Nemumu immediately becomes defensive, but the guy says he isn't looking to cause any trouble. He says his name is Sullivan, and his buddy over here is Gilbert. They heard that Light and his party were able to defeat a quad-sized mantis and made it all the way down to the 5th door, so when he saw him walking by, he just had to talk to him. Just then, the rest of Gilbert and Sullivan's party tells them it's time to head into the dungeon, so they say goodbye to Light and head inside. Light thinks it's nice that he is giving hope to the other humans in town, but there is no shortage of other races who are envious of Light's power and believe he is a fraud. He kind of expected them to refuse to accept his accomplishments, but he's just going to have to force them to acknowledge him by showing undeniable results. Once he enters the dungeon, he tells Gold and Nemumu that he plans to head back down to the 5th floor today, but before that, he happens to spot the kids from before, so he decides to head down to say hello. Mia and the others are surprised to see Light since it has been a while since they last ran into each other, but Mia's brother says this is perfect timing since there's something Mia has been wanting to give him. Mia is a little nervous about it at first, but she hands Light a little clamshell with some ointment she made herself. She remembers him mentioning that he has severe burns all over his body, so she made it to help relieve the pain a little. Light is really grateful for the kind gesture, though it does make him feel a little bad for lying to her about having burns. To make up for it, he decides to return the favor and pulls out one of his items as a gift for Mia. It's a bracelet, and it looks really nice, so Mia isn't sure she should be accepting something that's so valuable. Light tells her that her gift really warmed his heart, so he wants her to have it as his way of returning the favor. She happily accepts the gift and tells Light she will treasure it forever, but after Light and the others depart, Nemumu asks him if he's sure it was wise to give her an SS-class item so casually. That bracelet was a wishing bracelet, and depending on the will of the weather, it can make a small miracle come true, so Light figured it would be a great gift for someone like Mia. A little while later, they arrive on the 5th floor, and it is absolutely covered in snow. This works out in their favor since the snow will act as great cover, so Light tells Gold and Nemumu that they are in charge of hunting Yenis while he's gone, and then he activates a teleportation item, sending him back to his throne room in the dungeon city. There he has a nice cup of tea and asks his team how the revenge operations are coming along. Ellie tells him that she has almost gotten everything ready, so they will be able to move on to the next phase before much longer. Light is happy to hear that, so he tells Ellie she is free to use whatever resources she needs to make sure things progress smoothly, and in the meantime, he would like Mei to continue managing affairs here in the Abyss and Akuki to continue scouting. Just then, Mizuna asks him if there's anything he wants her to do in the meantime, and Light doesn't really know what to say because Mizuna is pretty useless when it comes to anything other than defeating monsters, but he also doesn't want to make her feel left out, so he says she is to remain on standby to protect the city in case a powerful bad guy shows up. That's good enough for her, so she swears that no one will get her on her watch, and Light can't wait for the day that his plan can go into action because he wants to savor the miserable look on Sasha's face when he confronts her. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the dungeon, Gilbert and Sullivan had set up camp and were keeping watch while their party members slept. At one point, Sullivan needed to go pee, so he stepped in the forest for a moment, but by the time he came back, he saw Gilbert's decapitated head lying on the ground with Keto standing over him. The other two were also killed in their sleep, and Keto makes it clear that he is doing this out of pure hatred for the human species as a whole. Sullivan is enraged by what Keto has done, but he is smart enough to know that he stands no chance against him. So he throws down a smoke bomb and starts running away so he can make it back to the guild to report what happened. He thinks he has a good shot of escaping since most magic is useless unless you know where your opponent is. However, he suddenly gets hit in the back with something, and as he looks up, he sees Keto riding on a magical hoverboard. He is then knocked out a moment later by Yannick, and he scolds Keto for killing all the humans since he was very specific about capturing them alive. Kaido doesn't see the problem since it shouldn't matter if he killed a few lowly humans, and it's not like Yannick actually cared about their lives either, but he needs as many test subjects as possible because his research is currently unstable and Sullivan is bound to die from side effects long before Yannick perfects it, so they need to find some more human guinea pigs. A little while later, up on the surface, Nemumu is arguing with the guild receptionist to try and get Light promoted, but while the receptionist is aware how strong Light is, they already made an exception to promote him from F to D rank recently, and not enough time has passed for them to consider another exception. However, she does tell him that if he accomplishes something extraordinary again, the guild would have no choice but to promote him, so Light decides to try it. After looking around for the day, he finds a flyer talking about an unknown adventurer killer, and tracking this killer down should be enough of an accomplishment, so he decides to hunt the killer down. However, he has no leads to go off of, so it is going to be difficult. Gold suggests he could use his Gacha ability to get a card that will help track the killer down, but Light tells him that the cards he gets are completely random, so the odds of him receiving a tracking card are really slim. In that case, Nemumu asks if they should return to the Abyss to get someone who has skills more suited for tracking, and that does sound like a good idea. But it would take too long, and he doesn't want to waste too much time catching the killer. They seem to be targeting exclusively humans, and he doesn't want to let that go unpunished. Just then, the three feel a space rift open within the room, meaning something is about to show up, so they get into battle formation and wait to see what it is. However, to Light's surprise, when the portal opens, he sees Mia fall out of the portal unconscious, and after catching her, the miracle bracelet he gave her breaks in two. Light has no idea what happened to her, but he knows it must be bad, so he carries her to bed, and as he does so, he can hear her mumbling to herself about how she needs to hurry and inform him of something. He casts a healing spell on Mia to help her recover, but she's still in no condition to speak, so Light apologizes, but he's going to need to pry into her mind a little. He casts a powerful mind spell on her, and as he does so, he sees a flashback to Mia and the rest of her party meeting a second group of adventurers. The second group warned them to be careful, because there have been reports of an adventurer killer going around, and the guy apparently only targets humans. The kids had heard about it, but they were under the impression that it was just a rogue monster. However, now that they think about it, a monster wouldn't target humans specifically. After hearing this, Mia got worried because she knew their party wouldn't stand a chance if the killer attacked them, and the same goes for the other group of adventurers, which is why they plan to get out of here as soon as possible. Before the second party leaves, they tell the kids that they should probably leave the dungeon as well, since until the killer is caught, it won't be safe for humans down here. The kids took the warning seriously and decided to leave as soon as possible, but since they weren't expecting to have to make a sudden hike back to the surface, they are all really tired. Due to this, they weren't able to make it back before nightfall, but they couldn't afford to stop since they did know when the killer might strike again. And in a stroke of bad luck, a moment later they hear Yannick's voice telling them that it's dangerous to be out here this late at night. At this point, the kids have no idea that these two are behind the killings, so Mia suggests they should warn them. The group tells Yannick and Kido that there has been a string of killings happening down here, so it would be safer to return to the surface for now. Kaito and Yannick thank them for the valuable information, and at first the kids are relieved since they think that must mean they are just normal adventurers like them. But then Yannick starts talking about how he wishes he had put more effort into covering up his and Kido's attack since the news spreading has caused all the human adventurers to wise up and avoid the dungeon. As soon as the kids hear him say that, their blood runs cold at the realization that the killers they were so worried about are the people who are right in front of them. And Kido seems to really be enjoying the look of pure terror on their faces. The kids are all terrified, but they know there's no way all of them will make it out of this even if they run, so the three boys takes out their weapons and tell Mia to flee while they buy her some time. Kaito feels insulted that lowly humans would think they stand a chance against him, so as Mia's brother charges forward, he slices him across the chest without a second thought. He does the same to the other two as well, and while they aren't dead yet, their wounds are so severe that they are practically knocking on death's door. Even so, they still force themselves back to their feet and yell for Mia to run away while they charge at Kito, and this infuriates Kido even more, so he decides to kill them outright. Yannick yells at him for this because he won't be able to use those two as guinea pigs now that they are dead. However, Kido tells him to shut up because there's no way he was going to let them live when they were so disrespectful to him, fighting for their lives and stuff. So Yannick should still be able to carry out his experiments. Yannick admits that a magician is especially valuable as a research subject, but he says those boys could have been just as valuable, so Kido promises not to kill any more guinea pigs from now on. But before Yannick begins experimenting with Mia, Kido plans to do some terrible things to her just for fun, and even Yannick doesn't want to be involved in that debauchery. So he just reminds Kido to make sure Mia doesn't die and turns away. Mia is terrified as Kido looms over her with nefarious intent, but before he could do anything, her brother suddenly gets back on his feet and yells for Mia to run. Yannick is amazed that he managed to cling on to life despite his severe wounds, and that's the kind of tenacity he needs in a test subject. So he tells Kaito to make sure he captures the boy alive at all costs. His body is on the verge of giving out, but that doesn't matter to him right now because the only thing on his mind right now is making sure that Mia gets out of here. He tells her again to run away, and as much as she doesn't want to leave her brother behind, she knows this is the only chance she will get since Kaito is currently distracted, so she turns and starts running. As soon as Kaito realizes she is escaping, he prepares to chase after her, but Elio attempts to strike him, and while he had no hope of actually injuring Kaito, it's enough of a distraction to buy Mia a few more seconds to escape. Kaito really wants to just kill Mia's brother and get this over with, but Yannick reminds him that he needs the boy alive so he can't cause any fatal wounds. Meanwhile, Elio has been muttering to himself, trying to figure out a way to buy as much time for Mia to escape as possible, and he thinks back to the lesson he learned from Gold when they first met. Gold said that it is normal to assume that a sword is for attacking and that a shield is for defending, but battle is about creativity and skill, so you need to be able to surprise your opponent if you want to win. Elio puts that lesson into practice here and throws his sword at Kaito. Kaito assumes this must be his attack, so he leans back to dodge the blade, but while he wasn't paying attention, Elio closed the distance and clocked him in the jaw with his shield, knocking Kaito over. That's the best Elio could do, but he is really proud of himself because even if he is going to die here, at least he managed to land a clean blow on Kaito. Kaito can't believe a lowly human was actually able to land a hit on him, and he feels so humiliated and enraged that he completely disregards Yannick's request to keep Elio alive and uses his sword to shoot a light spear straight through his abdomen. He somehow didn't die instantly from the attack, and Kaito plans to make him suffer as much as possible for daring to strike his majestic face, but Yannick stops him and says he needs to go after Mia immediately because if she manages to escape, things will get complicated once the guild finds out about what they've been doing here. Kaito is still angry, but he understands Yannick's point, so he turns around and starts chasing after Mia. Mia has been running as fast as she can for a while now, but before she could make it to the exit, Kido blocked her path with 3 light blades. Mia is in disbelief because she didn't think he would be able to catch up so quickly, but Kido possesses the Elf Nation's Phantasm class weapon, the legendary sword Grandius, and it allows him to create as many blades of light as he wants and move them around at will. He tells her there's no use running since with his blades. Catching up to her is a trivial task, but Mia still refuses to give up. She casts a spell and launches a few icicles at Kido to break his line of sight so she can escape into the forest, but after running for a few more minutes, Kido finds her again and knocks her to the ground. He tells her she should be grateful that she will be sacrificed for the benefit of a future legendary hero like him, but Mia yells that he doesn't deserve to be called that. The title of legendary hero is reserved for people who are both strong and kind like Light, but Kido, on the other hand, is nothing but a loser who enjoys bullying those weaker than him. Hearing that strikes a nerve for Kido as he recalls how the other elves all mocked him for being a good-for-nothing bully who was only willing to pick on the weak. It was part of the reason he was banished from elf society in the first place, but he refuses to accept that he is the problem and instead blames everyone else around him for not recognizing how great he is. He loses his mind in anger and forgets all about keeping Mia alive, so he is about to strike her down, and Mia can tell that there's no escaping this attack, but she still refused to give up and was desperately trying to think of a way to get to Light so she can ask for help, and that's when the bracelet kicked in. Back to the present, after learning of everything Mia and the others went through, Light is beside himself with anger, so he tells Gold and Nemumu to get ready to head out, because he's about to crash out on those elves. Back in the dungeon, Yannick is trying to heal Elio's wounds, but from the state his body is in, it looks like it's already too late to save him, and he is really upset about losing such a valuable specimen. Just then, Kido returns and Yanni asks him if he managed to capture the girl, but he says he lost track of her, and as soon as Yanni hears that, he starts panicking. He asks how Kido could let himself be bested by a little girl, but Kido says it wasn't his fault because how was he supposed to know that she would just vanish into thin air like that? Yanni can't believe it since there's no way a human child like her would have a teleportation item on her, but that's definitely what happened, so he needs to face the facts. And the facts say the two of them are screwed. If Mia reports what happened to the guild, it will only be a matter of time before word reaches the Elf Nation, and as soon as they figure out where Kido is, they are going to come after him for stealing the Grandius sword. To make matters worse, the Elf Nation will almost certainly send the head knight after them as well, and he is said to be around level 3000, with all of his personal knights under him being at least level 2000. In other words, Kido and Yannick by extension are cooked. Their only shot at surviving now would be to try out Yannick's research in order to make Kido strong enough to face off against the Elven Knights, but before they could leave to do so, Light suddenly shows up, and he tells them they won't be going anywhere. Kido recognizes Light as the guy who called him out for skipping the line when he first came into the dungeon, but he doesn't understand how a human could possibly sneak up on him like this when he's 1,500. Light is saddened to see Jimra and Wardy lying lifeless on the ground, and it is already too late to save them, so he closes their eyes and apologizes for not getting here sooner. Gold then grabs Elio's body and he seems to have some life left in him, so Light might still be able to save him. He casts healing magic on Elio and then turns back to ask Kido why he would do something like this. Scratch that, he doesn't care what self-centered reason they may have because they made his friends suffer, and he swears on his name that he will make them suffer pain so unbearable that they will beg for the sweet release of death. Light asks Nemumu and Gold to stay out of this because he wants to handle it on his own, and Kido is offended that Light seems to think he can defeat him alone. He is sick of insignificant humans defying him all the time even though he is vastly superior, so he says he will take his sweet time torturing Light before killing him. But after launching his first strike, Light is easily able to stop it with his staff, and he is a little disappointed in Kido because he was expecting more power from him. He loses his shit after Light nearly knocks him out with his staff and decides to use his sword's full power to take him out, but despite dozens of blades close being shot at Light, he is easily able to counter them all with some ice magic, leaving Kido in utter disbelief. He begins throwing a temper tantrum because he can't accept that a human is actually better than him, and he starts talking about how with the great sword of the ancient Maestro, he shouldn't be losing like this. Light honestly wasn't paying much attention, but as soon as he heard Kido mention a Maestro, he becomes invested because this is the kind of information he's been looking for. Light asks how Kido knows about Maestros, but he laughs and says there's no way he wouldn't know about it. After all, he was born with the blood of a Maestro. This was the end of episode 6. Subscribe to not miss the next part.